I've got a new project that I'm very excited to start, so let's jump into it. I'm going to be setting up my very first planted aquarium using this Scaper Qube 15 from Superfish. It comes complete with a light, hang on the back filter, a background, which I'm not sure if I'm actually going to use, and some plant fertilizer. So let's get started. And I will be starting by adding in a layer of gravel at the back to add some height and give the beneficial bacteria somewhere to call home. But first I'll need to clean it, so I'll just rinse it out in a bucket. With the gravel clean, I'll bank it up quite high at the back to create a substantial slope with none at the front. This should help to create the illusion of extra depth. So that should be plenty for what I'm trying to achieve. Then on top of that, I'm going to add some Flora First aqua soil. I'm looking for a layer about 1/2 inch thick at the front and slightly thicker at the back to give me plenty of planting depth for the future. You can see it more clearly from the side. Then I capped it with a thin layer of black sand, but unfortunately I'd stopped the recording. With the substrate now sorted, I'm ready to add the hardscaping, which for this tank I plan on just using this large piece of slate that essentially has 2 tiers that I'll be using for planting. The top platform will be used for a plant, which is actually the reason I decided to get into planted aquariums. So let's get the rock placed in the tank to the right depth that leaves the top very slightly above the waterline. I want a gap between the waterline and the top of the tank, so that will have to go slightly lower. I've realised that I should have put this in place before capping with the sand, as I have disturbed the substrate and brought a lot of the aqua soil to the surface. I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. It's given a bit of a Pride Rock vibe. I'll add a bit more sand to try to cover the surface aqua soil. That's cleaned it up nicely and given the look I'm after. To make the substrate a little more interesting while I'm waiting for plants to grow in, I'm going to add some coloured gravel, which is just some decorative terrarium grit. I'll just scatter in all of the colours except for the white, as it will look unnatural in this setup. This will break up the black nicely. Now what I'll do is get the filter in place. But now I've realised that I didn't plan for the filter intake tube, which now means I'm going to have to clear some substrate away from this back corner. I've removed pretty much all of the substrate from this corner, so I'll have to rescape the substrate into something that works better with the setup. I've changed it so that it slopes diagonally back from left to right rather than from front to back. Now let's get the light set up and then we'll be ready to start planting. I'm pretty happy with how that's looking for a starting point, though I'm sure it will change and evolve over time. I'm going to start by adding a small amount of water just to fully saturate the substrate, as I think that will help me with the planting. With the substrate now fully submerged, I'm ready to put the foreground plants in. Unfortunately for me though, they don't have labels, so I'm not actually sure what plant it is. If you know its name, then please leave a comment. So in order to prep this plant ready for planting, I need to firstly remove it from its pot, and then remove all the rock wool surrounding the roots, making sure to take care in order to not damage any of the roots in the process. Then with the rock wool removed, I can determine how many separate plants it can be divided into. It's very tangled, but I've managed to separate a clump and have gathered the roots together, so I'll just use some tweezers to get this into the aquarium. The second clump is slightly larger, and after the first one I think it'll be easier to push it in with my fingers than use the tweezers that I have. I ended up with 3 clumps from that one pot, and I'm hoping they spread nicely and create a bit of a carpet at the front of the tank. Now I'll add some more water to the tank and then put in the midground plants. Before the first platform on the slate gets covered in water, I'm going to add this Java fern, as I'm going to be gluing it to the rock. After removing all the rock wool, I can now see the rhizome, which is a horizontal stem that sends out roots and shoots. It's this part that I can glue to the rock without harming the plant, and for that I'll be using Superfish aquarium glue. It's a cyanoacrylate gel superglue, and I'll begin by putting a blob onto the rock, and then I can push the rhizome into that. I'll attempt to get them to fan out so that it looks a bit more natural. happy with how that's looking, so I'll continue adding water. That's plenty deep enough for me to put the midground plants in, which are stem plants, but again I don't know the name, so if you recognise them, then please leave a comment and let me know. I have 2 pots of these, so I'll leave them clumped together and plant 1 pot either side of the rock. I'll use my hands for this and make sure I'm pushing them plenty deep enough into the aqua soil. That's a good amount for some instant impact in that area. And I'll just repeat the process for the other side. Because of the difference in the substrate level between the 2 sides, it's created a difference in the heights of the tops of the plants, which adds some visual interest. I've realised that I can raise the back of the rock slightly to ensure that the top of it will be above the final water level. And with that done, I can fill the water up to its final level, then I'll be able to plant the background stems. Before it quite reaches its final level, I'll fill up the reservoir on the filter, as this needs to be done in order to prime it for it to function. So you can see that the highest corner of the rock is just out of the water, and that should be perfect for what I have planned. With that done, I am ready to put in the background plants. I have 2 pots of these, but again I'm not sure of the name, so if you recognise them, then please let me know in the comments. And again I'll be putting 1 pot on each side, using my hand to push them deep into the aqua soil. I've now got all the aquatic plants in and have turned the filter on and set it to a low flow rate as it's such a small tank. So now I can add some water treatment in the form of tap water conditioner from Aquacare, which will remove chlorine, chloramine and neutralise any heavy metals. Then, as this is a new setup, I will be adding some Microbe Lift Night Out 2 starter bacteria to speed up the process of bacteria colonisation in order to convert harmful nitrites into nitrates that can be used by the plants. I'll also be adding some Microbe Lift Plants Green and Bio CO2 fertilisers, which along with the aqua soil will give the plants the best possible start. And that is the initial setup done, so I have completed my first attempt at aquascaping. Let me know what you think, and if you'd like to keep up to date with the progress of this tank, then be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.